What do we know about Grond, that massive battering ram Sauron's forces used on Minas Tirith? Is it magical? Let's take a look. Hi everyone, this is Robert. Welcome to In Deep Geek. On this channel we dive deep into Tolkien's Legendarium, as well as A Song of Ice and Fire and The Witcher. As Sauron's forces pressed on to besiege Minas Tirith in what became known as the Battle of the Pelennor Fields, they started with a wide, seemingly random attack across the breadth of the city's outer wall. Siege engines flung rocks, fire and arrows filled the sky, keeping the defenders occupied and pinned down. But it would be at the centre of the wall and the Great Gate that they would focus their main assault, and it soon became apparent that they had a weapon designed specifically to breach it. We read this. The drums rolled louder, fires leaped up, great engines crawled across the field, and in the midst was a huge ram, great as a forest tree 100 feet in length, swinging on mighty chains. Long had it been forging in the dark smithies of Mordor, and its hideous head, founded of black steel, was shaped in the likeness of a ravening wolf. On it spells of ruin lay. Grond, they named it, in memory of the hammer of the underworld of old. Great beasts drew it, orcs surrounded it, and behind walked mountain trolls to wield it. Immediately, it is apparent that this is no normal battering ram. More than 30 metres long, it would require mountain trolls to wield it, and spells of ruin were laid upon it. For a couple of pages, Tolkien keeps our attention fixed on this dark object. This, it is clear, is how Sauron's army would break into Minas Tirith. The defenders on the wall tried shooting down the beasts dragging it, but more just took their place. They tried flaming arrows, but it seemed impervious. Tolkien repeats the phrase, Grond crawled on, almost anthropomorphizing the ram with its wolf's head, its slow approach inevitable and unstoppable. Finally, it reaches its destination outside the gate, and we read on. It swung. A deep boom rumbled through the city like thunder running in the clouds, but the doors of iron and posts of steel withstood the stroke. Then the black captain rose in his stirrups and cried aloud in a dreadful voice, speaking in some forgotten tongue, words of power and terror to rend both heart and stone. Thrice, he cried. Thrice the great ram boomed, and suddenly, upon the last stroke, the gate of Gondor broke. As if stricken by some blasting spell, it burst asunder. There was a flash of searing lightning, and the doors tumbled in riven fragments to the ground. This was the high water mark for Sauron's forces. Through the splintered gate rode the Witch King, and then a cock crowed, horns blared in the distance, and Rohan had arrived. Which rather takes us away from thinking about Grond, because in just 4 swings it burst through the Great Gate of Minas Tirith, which is very impressive. That gate was described as very strong, wrought of steel and iron, and guarded with towers and bastions of indomitable stone. So, a thick metal gate surrounded by indomitable stone, broken in a matter of seconds. This clearly was not just a normal, albeit very large, battering ram. We're told from the start that spells of ruin had been placed upon it, and that is only backed up by what we see of it in action. The first impact is impressive, but the gates hold firm. It's the other 3 that seemingly bring the magic. The Witch King cries out words of power and terror to rend heart and stone, seemingly to trigger the magic of the ram itself, and on the final impact, the gates react as if some blasting spell had been used, a flash of searing lightning. Tolkien always keeps his magic system very soft and vague, but it's clear. The Great Gate of Minas Tirith fell to dark magic, delivered by Grond. At which point we could leave talking about Grond. It had achieved its mission and promptly disappeared from the pages of history, but I think Tolkien would want us to dig a bit deeper. Remember how the ram was named Grond in memory of the hammer of the underworld of old. What does that mean? Well, to answer that, we need to go into the Silmarillion and to the First Age of Middle-earth. Morgoth, the original bad guy in the Legendarium, and Sauron's boss at that moment in time, had been holed up in his fortress of Angband. He hadn't ventured forth at all during the wars of the First Age, but then Fingolfin, the king of the elves, came to his gates and challenged him direct to a one-on-one duel. We're told that Morgoth didn't really want to do that, but realised that he would be called a coward if he refused, so slowly, seemingly reluctantly, he donned his armour and made his way outside. We read this. Then Morgoth hurled aloft Grond, the hammer of the underworld, and swung it down like a bolt of thunder. But Fingolfin sprang aside, and Grond rent a mighty pit in the earth, whence smoke and fire darted. Many times Morgoth essayed to smite him, and each time Fingolfin leaped away, as a lightning shoots from under a dark cloud, and he wounded Morgoth with 7 wounds, and 7 times Morgoth gave a cry of anguish, whereat the hosts of Angband fell upon their faces in dismay, and the cries echoed in the Northlands. At which point, let's pause to note that Grond literally means very weighty and ponderous in Sindarin, and that Morgoth was losing this battle. He kept on swinging that great mace, but each time he missed, and each time Fingolfin managed to wound him in return. We're told that even the hosts of Angband, orcs and whoever else was watching, fell on their faces in dismay. Grond was ineffective, and Morgoth was losing. The end of that battle sees Fingolfin eventually grow tired, and Morgoth manages to basically squash him with his shield, not using Grond at all, and with a last burst of energy, Fingolfin manages to cut Morgoth's foot, giving him a limp he never lost. Morgoth won, but any aura he had once of being indomitable was lost. We're told the orcs never boasted of that battle, and refused in fear to even go near Fingolfin's tomb. Technically a win, but it felt like a loss. So why remind the orcs of the Third Age of it by naming the great battering ram after that war mace? At the risk of trying to read Sauron's mind, I think there are a number of levels here. On a surface level, I suspect that Sauron the Great Smith probably admired and remembered the craft that must have gone into making Grond. It was slow but impressively powerful, leaving craters in the earth wherever it struck, from which smoke and fire burst. It was like a bolt of thunder, we're told. Tolkien deliberately echoes this language in his description of Grond the battering ram. Perhaps Sauron even used the same magic or technology. The difference this time was that it didn't matter if his Grond was slow. The gate wasn't about to dodge out of the way like Fingolfin did. Second, I wonder whether Sauron will have been aware that he wasn't exactly being a visible hands-on general at that moment. Like Morgoth had kept himself safe in Angband, he was tied to Mordor. By sending forth a weapon called Grond that people knew was his, he was symbolically taking part in the battle himself. And third, Sauron intended his Grond to be vital in winning the battle, unlike Morgoth's Grond, which clearly wasn't. Perhaps Sauron wanted to redeem the technology, so to speak, to show that it could work, or maybe he just wanted to show that he could use it better than his erstwhile master. We'll probably never know. Of course, the irony is that the first time around Grond was ineffective, but Morgoth won. This time, Grond was very effective, but Sauron lost. Grond was a remarkable piece of magical machinery, hugely powerful, but power alone was never enough. If you'd like to see more videos like this about Tolkien's Legendarium, there's a link to my playlist appearing now on the left of your screen. Or to support this channel, thank you. There's a link to my Patreon page on the right of your screen. That's all for this time. Thanks for watching. I'll see you again soon.